This tutorial will cover Chapter 6, Exercise 2, which gives you an introduction to the debugging tool that's in NetBeans. It's worth mentioning that that NetBeans IDE offers this debugging tool as the single very quickest way to trace the program flow and track down problems either in the flow or other issues that may come up along the line as you develop your code. Debugging is not unique to NetBeans. All major IDEs have debugging capability. As you might probably have read in Chapter 6 by now, there was an older way of debugging programs which involved, in the case of PHP, involved putting echo statements throughout the code at various places and then running the program and watching these echo statements appear as that section of code executed. This worked fine, except that it required a lot of manual coding in the inserting and then later subsequent removal of these echo statements. Pretty time consuming and a very manual process, but for the longest time it was the only thing available. But now all modern IDEs have this debugging capability, which provides many features. Just to name a few: the ability to step through the code in live execution, one line of code at a time, and the ability to monitor variables along the way to see how the calculations are working or to make sure that variables have the expected values. Another feature that most debuggers also allow is dynamic modification of variables during the program's execution. So in case a value comes up unexpectedly, you can alter the value just to see how the program behaves. Alright, the Chapter 6, Exercise 2 asks you to go to the Starts folder, open up the Display Results PHP file that you find there. It wants you to go down and insert a breakpoint. It's worth noting that if you execute a program in debug mode but you fail to insert breakpoints, then the program will just run straight through, almost like it would without the debugging process in place. To really make the debugger wake up and start to show you things, you need to insert at least one breakpoint. A breakpoint is simply a marker that you place anywhere on any line of code, and as soon as the debugger runs across that line during the execution of the program, it will stop and wait for you to take some kind of action to either tell it to continue or do some other things that you'll see in just a moment. To insert a breakpoint in a PHP program, as it is in most IDEs, it's very simple. You find the line of code. The book wants us to insert a breakpoint just before the for loop that does this calculation, and that would be where future value is set equal to the value that's in the variable called investment. To insert a breakpoint, you simply come over here on the left-hand side, somewhere over the top of the line number, and click once. And when you do, if the insertion of the breakpoint worked, the line will turn red, and there will be a small red square that appears, and this says there is a breakpoint here. You can insert other breakpoints as needed. So if I wanted to insert one here, for example, I could click, insert one down here. I could say click. To remove a breakpoint, you simply position on top of it and click again, and that turns it off. Now, every once in a while, you may not be able to insert a breakpoint. Don't see any examples right off the bat here, but every once in a while, it may not allow you to insert a breakpoint, and that's okay. That just means that you've clicked on a line of code that might not have execution. Sometimes comments work that way. And in this particular IDE, it allows you to insert a breakpoint on a comment. So for our purposes, we're going to insert a breakpoint just before the for loop. Now, normally you would come up here to run this project. You would come up here on the command line, or in the toolbar rather, and say Run Project. Or you also might be able to right-click and open and then run the project. So if we do that, even with the breakpoint inserted, we run the project, then it will run normally without benefit of the debugger. So if we put an investment amount of $1,000, a yearly interest rate of 10%, and a 5-year term, we click calculate, the results are instantly returned to us. And that executes the program. Notice the breakpoint had no effect. In order to utilize this breakpoint, you have to actually execute the program in what's called debug mode. In order to do, one way to do that is instead of clicking up here on the toolbar Run Project, move over one icon and it'll say Debug Project. For those of you that are using your keyboard, Run Project was always F6. To debug the project is Control F5. So we're going to click that. The first thing you notice is instead of getting the web page, you are transferred to where the current line of execution is in the code. Now let's go back to the browser, which is fired up down here. Notice there is nothing on this browser and we are waiting for a reply. That's because the debugger has paused execution at the first PHP command, which is right here. The current execution line is denoted by the arrow that you see right here. So in order to begin, we can either hit continue, which will take us on until the breakpoint is encountered, or if we so desire, we can simply come up here and start exploring the various options available to us during the debug session. You'll see these next to the continue are step over, step into, and step out, and also run to cursor. The most common one you will use during a normal debug session is step over. Step over means step over this line to the next line of code. So if we click that right here, we step over to the next PHP command, which is this echo statement. We step over again to the next line, which is here, and we would just continue to step through the program. What we want to do though is because we've inserted a breakpoint at the location we're interested in, we're going to, instead of stepping over continuously, we're going to click continue. Continue says run as normal until you either encounter the end of the program or you encounter a breakpoint. So let's click continue, and we either encountered a breakpoint or we encountered the end of this run, in which case the end is denoted by a transmission of a page. So per the application, it is now presented a page waiting for the user to input some values. So we're going to type $1,000, interest rate of 12% for a 10-year term. Now you may recall a while ago when we were not debugging, I clicked calculate and we were immediately presented with the results. Now I'm going to click calculate and notice that NetBeans has woken up down here and we are not getting an immediate response. So let's click back on NetBeans. You'll notice we're back here in our debug session now, the yellow arrow denoting the line of code that we're currently executing. So I'm going to click continue again. Now this time we stop on that breakpoint that we set. You may recall this is the breakpoint, and you can kind of see the little red square behind the green arrow here denoting that this is current execution point. Okay, now one of the things going on also down here on the bottom of the screen are the current values of various variables that have been set. So what we want to do now is I want to step over one time, and then I want to see what's in future value. Now how do I know where future value is? Well, there's the name of all currently used variables. This one's future value. It's a string and it currently has a value of 1,000. You may remember I typed 1,000 from the web page over here. The rate was 12 and the number of years was 10. So if we look down here at interest rate, we have 12. Years, we have 10. So now I'm going to step over and we get into the for loop. Now watch what happens. See, future value here is currently at 1,000. I'm about to perform a calculation, so watch what happens when I step over one more time. What is future value now? It's 12 or 1120. And we're stepping through this loop the number of years that was specified. So we're going to step over again. Future value changed to 1254. And this will continue for as many years as we've specified. And so you can always go down here to years and say 10. So that means we're going to loop through this thing 10 times. I want you to keep a good close eye on future value. I'm going to click step over again, step over again, and so on. Now once it finishes the 10th time, let's go through this. Should be just about done. There we go. I is equal to 10. I is the variable we're using to determine how many times we go through our loop. Years is the number we're setting to determine the limit, and now we should jump out of the loop, which we did. Investment F, where is that? Is there any variable by that name? Not yet, because we haven't actually executed the line. When you're highlighting the line, it means that you are about to execute that line. In order to execute it, you click step over. Now investment F has a value of $1,000 with the $ indicator. And we've got another variable down here. And we're going to click step over again. This time we have yearly rate F, which is 12%. And we're about to have future value F, which is $31.0585. Now all the while, if you look back on our web page, you notice nothing has changed because we are still in the process of executing the code, generating the result page. And we could continue stepping into this, or I can click continue, in which case the program will reach the end and project, or rather present, the results page. So that's just a brief overview of what's possible in using the debugger. Much more efficient than sprinkling echo statements throughout the code. Also gives you the ability, as I said earlier, to modify the values as we go through the code. Let's do that. I want to stop the debug session. Notice now the browser says debug session ended. And I want to execute this thing again using the debugger. So let's click the debug start. I'm going to immediately click continue because the breakpoint is still set. Pages will come up. We'll put $1,000, 12%, this time for 25 years. Go back to our IDE and run, or continue rather, until we reach our breakpoint, which is right here. Now, what I'm going to do is, as we're running, I want to stop the program immediately after it finishes all of this looping. So I'm going to come down here and set a breakpoint as the program is running. So now I can, instead of stepping over and running through this loop 25 times, I can click continue again, and it will run until the next breakpoint. Now you may recall that once we execute, I'm going to step over, once we execute these 3 lines of code, those become our values that get presented back to the web page. And notice we are about to present a value of $17,000.06. I'm not a real big fan of that. I want to change this thing, so I'm going to change it just because I can to $24.95. Press enter. That value is now changed. So now when I click continue to finish out the page presentation, I now get $24.95, and that is an example of dynamic variable modification. That just about covers this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if it helped. Thanks.